where Adam works. So it actually has some availability over the next month. I know a lot of their clients listen and they'll be very excited to hear that they have some availability because it is rare. So if you need your pens tested, do get in touch with Insomnia. It's time for this week's sponsor segment now, and this week's show is brought to you by Kasada. Kasada offers a very simple service. It's a proof of work-based bot filter, essentially, and it just works very well. Kasada is an Australian startup that has gotten off to a terrific start by solving a very, very simple problem. That problem being bots, content scraping bots, credential stuffing bots, badly written bots that cause service disruptions. If it's a bad bot, by all reports, they do a good job of blocking it. Now, I'm sure they're using other methods, but the primary thing they've done here to make this thing work is to force clients to demonstrate some sort of proof of work before they can get anywhere on your service. And you'll see other websites that are maybe using some captchas that do this. Other times you'll see things like Cloudflare hold you on one of its pages before you can proceed just while it does that proof of work. But Kasada's trick here is to do this invisibly so the user experience is unaffected. As I mentioned, it's a cloud service, and one of its customers is REA Group, and they are the operator of realestate.com.au. That's where you go when you're house hunting here in Australia. There's basically only two real estate sites. There's realestate.com.au and domain.com.au. And I'm pretty sure realestate.com.au is the bigger one. But anyway, Craig Templeton is REA Group's CISO and GM of Group Technology Platform. So he's basically the security guy and the platform guy. Now, REA Group was having some problems with bots. There were business concerns around content scraping. There were security concerns around cred stuffing and availability concerns around badly written bots causing service disruptions. And in the end, Craig picked Kasada to solve that problem for REA Group. And he joined me for this interview to explain why. And he started off by explaining what was happening at REA Group before they found a good solution. Here's what he said.
We were getting a lot of lost engineering time, either through security incidents or just engineers getting woken up at 3 a.m. quite often and dealing with scrapers and stuff. But occasionally we do get service disruption as well because, like, let's face it, who says that people who write scrapers are any good at coding? So we get dodgy coding causing bad automation. We also we have a terms of service. Who would have thought that actually prohibits and really prefers people that they wouldn't scrape us? And it does impact customer experience as well. Not just from people trying to access your site. Maybe it starts getting a bit sluggish, but you potentially are getting web forms getting abused. So that then flows on to other people down the line. So I would say it was a range of issues that started really sort of bubbling up over time. So it got to the point where we're thinking, well, actually, we need to start really seriously looking at this a bit more systemically. It also became apparent to us that there's quite a lot of other businesses that are feeding off our data. And I suppose the first thing to say here is that automation in of itself is not bad. It's simply that it needs to be we would prefer to be on our terms. So, but in order to do that, then we have to have some sort of protection so that we can...
you'd rather be licensing your data than letting someone just scrape it, right?
Absolutely, because that's sort of indiscriminate. We're not in control of that. And like I said, I would prefer to expose the data in a managed way rather than having somebody sort of indiscriminately pinching it.
It's funny what you said about service interruptions, because I know with any type of classified site, right? And realestate.com.au is essentially a classified site. When you got that many listings and so many different ways to query it, I imagine that some of the people trying to scrape your data come up with all sorts of creative ways to run queries that can really slow things down, right? Because I know I've accidentally on classified sites before run a bit too much of a wildcard and I've watched the thing slow down,
Yeah, we leverage cloud computing quite heavily, and there's a cost to run that infrastructure. And even if you have auto-scaling groups, you got to set limits, right? And you got to manage and optimize around that. So it starts introducing quite a lot of interesting things, like in your log files, they just start filling out with crap. So therefore, how are you supposed to baseline what your normal state of play is whenever it's sort of polluted, let's say, with all this other nonsense? We've seen a range of everything from very simple sort of point and click bots to pretty sophisticated things which are literally pretending to be Googlebot. They're coming from an Amazon IP range. They're rotating maybe their user agent headers. They're rotating their IP addresses. So they're actually really determined to sort of come in low and be unnoticed. So we see everything.
Yeah, what is that? Just spoofed like agent strings and stuff?
Yep, all of that.
Yeah, I see that as well, man. Like, I think everybody sees that, but it's only a problem when, you're running such a dynamic website that can actually cause quite a few burned cycles.
Well, the other thing is that there's actually a cost to this. So people think that, stuff on the internet that's freely available is free, but it's not free. There's a cost to spin up this infrastructure. There's a cost of bandwidth. There's a cost of engineering time to run and maintain that. So it's like, we were talking earlier about, imagine you're having a party and you invite 50 of your closest friends and you lay on all the food and drinks because you're a good host. You want them to have a good time, and then like 100 other people turn up and they start drinking your drink and eating your food, and you're a good host. So you go back and you go down to the shops and you get some more drink and some more food because you want to give your friends a good time and have a nice party. And then while you're away, another 200 people rock up and they eat your food and drink your drink. And then some of them take that food down to the park and start selling it. So now they're selling the food that you provided free for your friends. And then later on in the night, somebody comes along and another 100 people come along and they kick the door in and then they beat up your guests. And that's what we call credential stuffing.
That's what we call doing business on the internet, essentially, right? Like, so look, this is a sponsored interview from Kasada. I mean, essentially, I'm going to boil down, and this is something I do quite frequently on the show. Boil down what they do to really express it in its simplest form. And essentially, what they make is a cloud-based anti-bot service that relies on proof of work to make a lot of these bots go away. I'm guessing that you started looking at solutions to this a while back. Like, what was the process that led you to eventually pick them? Because this is not something that is unique to Kasada. There's plenty of anti-bot plays out there.
Yeah, there is, and there's various different approaches that people take. The first thing that the engineers started looking at was, we've got a web application firewall, we'll just start blocking them. Well, that lasted about 5 minutes because I did get this engineering team coming to me saying, yeah, we're getting hit quite aggressively by this fake Google bot in Germany, and we're just going to block it. And I went, okay, come back to me on that. And after a week, they came back and they said, well, can you just make it go away? Because we're fed up getting up at 2:00 in the morning to deal with this. So it became evident to us pretty quickly that the WAFs were not going to be the answer to this. Even rate limiting, that only sort of limits what people can do. It doesn't still stop them from acquiring the data, so they just come in low and slow. So the other aspect was we have login portals as well. So we're exposed to credential stuffing, and that seems to be the attack du jour at the moment. So like every man and their dog that has a login portal is just getting smashed by this. Yeah. It got to the point where when you're facing something that is highly automated and highly dynamic, rules-based security just collapses. The dynamics of the game have now changed. So therefore, you need to fight automation with automation. And that's what sort of took us down the road to look at or companies like Kasada.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big things here, though, that is an advantage with Kasada, though, is like the user experience. It's pretty much invisible to the user. I know there's other proof of work things like, that company that also hosts Nazi forums, Cloudflare. They have one that at times you'll see like some sort of proof of work pop up in your browser before you land on the website you're heading to, which I'm guessing is probably not a direction you want it to go in because it's kind of a crappy user experience. Is that right?
Yeah, and user experience is really everything these days. I mean, we've got Apple to thank for that. So the expectations are really, really high from a consumer point of view. Whenever people are designing products, they want to have as little friction as possible. They want seamless experience. They want a joined up experience as well. So increasingly, security's sort of falling back into that sort of transparent layer. And we really felt that Kasada offered us that blend of good automated control and sort of seamless user experience. It just sort of sits behind and doesn't get in the way. How
does it actually deploy? Do are they like a front end and everything routes through them, or is it some JavaScript you include in your application? Like what's the deployment look like?
Yeah, it's kind of like a reverse proxy. So we didn't really want to be deploying heaps of JavaScript and so on. So we simply route our traffic through Kasada once they hit our CDN.
So it's CDN, then Kasada, then you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, right. So, and I'm guessing, this is one of those projects where measuring the ROI is actually pretty easy, right? And that they're always the easiest. They're always the easiest ones to get approval for.
Actually, this is one of the few things I've actually ever been able to put a dollar metric on in terms of ROI. So that in and of itself was really good. The other thing was the speed of deployment was really, really quick. So you can be up and running in literally minutes, really, really fast. I think the beauty is that they've actually nailed the onboarding process. When you're deploying security tech, the onboarding process can be pretty tricky. Like there's the POC and the demo that you've done, and once the sales guys leave, it's sort of like, okay, now we've got to plumb this thing in, and that's when the fun starts. But with Kasada, it was the barrier to entry so low. It was really incredibly easy to get on. And once you actually start seeing those bots being blocked in real time, wanting to turn that off becomes really hard. Again, they've just sort of nailed the customer acquisition phase.
So where do they host? Are they running like their own stuff in AWS or something like that? Like, are you concerned at all by introducing some sort of, latency or delay to queries because there's an extra hop, or has that not been an issue?
Yeah, so absolutely. They host in AWS. We're in AWS as well. There is an extra hop. That was a concern. So when we initially did the pilot, the engineering teams in the lines of business were quite concerned about this because, again, anything that would potentially introduce any kind of latency is frowned upon.
Well, and also a point of failure, and that'll be my next question, but latency first.
Yeah, so there was an extra hop. It was negligible. It was less than 200 milliseconds. So when we did our performance metrics and so on, we looked at this and saw there's no discernible notice for a human. So that was fine.
Yeah, and in terms of availability, I mean, that would be another concern that people would have, right? Like, you are really trusting Kasada not to have a bad time and take you down with them. Like, do you have contingencies put in place in case there are any issues, or you just or they have contingencies that you're satisfied with?
It's a bit of both. So we've done engineering on our side. We run 2 sites in 2 regions. So we're in Singapore and Sydney. We have hot failover as well. We can do some fancy stuff with routing. So if we do there's a heartbeat check, or we always constantly making sure that Kasada's up. If it's within our tolerances, we're okay, and if it's not, we'll flip. So we've actually done some engineering on our side as well.
Craig Templeton, thank you very much for joining us on Risky Biz to be a case study customer for this week's sponsor, Kasada. It's been very interesting, and I suspect there'll be a bunch of people working on similar platforms, online travel agencies, classified sites, job sites, all of those sort of sites that are dealing with this bot issue who will find that interesting. Thanks again.
Thanks, Pat.
That was Craig Templeton of REA Group there talking about Kasada. If you are interested in blocking some bots, do head over to kasada.io. That is kasada.io. You can get some more info there. And that is it for this week's show. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I will be posting a Soapbox edition with Ryan Callenber from Proofpoint in the next couple of days, and that is a really good listen, that one, so do check it out. I don't say that about every Soapbox I post, but yes, that one is great, so do check it out. But until then, I've been Patrick Gray. Thanks for listening.